state patronages. And who was the first to do so? Yes, you don't need to think a lot, as in the light of affidavits and testimonies, you all must be remembering that who has admitted of doing this dirty business to start with. A menace of terrorism has been existing in South Asia for centuries. It had different shapes and different names, as well as different dynamics in different eras, at least from the colonial era till now. However, this menace started touching the new horizon after it started getting the state patronages. And who was the first to do so? Yes, you don't need to think a lot, as in the light of affidavits and testimonies, you all must be remembering that who has admitted of doing this dirty business to start with.
Pakistan's vulnerability is many times higher than of India. Once they know that India has shifted its gear from the defensive mode to defensive offense, they will find that it is unaffordable for them. It can be defeating their policies in Afghanistan, making it difficult for them to manage internal political balance or internal security. I'm not going into those details. You can do one Mumbai, you may lose Balochistan.
Yes, sir. The menace of terror touched new horizon when Indian government started organizing and patronizing it as a state policy and barged into regional state of Sri Lanka with a composite terrorism plan. Yes, Sri Lanka, a small group of Tamil Hindus started creating some subversive activities in the decades of 1970s to become unchallengeable criminals, especially to practice their smuggling from India to Sri Lanka and Sri Lanka to India. They managed to create some impact, but they were still far away from becoming a full-fledged terror outfit. You can say they were not at least organized terror outfit until Indians started patronizing them. Hindu criminals were having full patronage from India to become mega terror force and decisive force in Sri Lanka. This Buddhist dominated state, India wanted to make it a Hindu dominated state by putting these Hindu Tamils into power and to fulfill their desire of Akhand Bharat. India started organizing, training, arming and funding these Tamil criminals, and within a span of few years managed to take them to highly organized terrorist organization named LTTE, with a lot of sub-organization including TALO, EROS, APRA and TA, and the monster of terror outfit were put under the umbrella of LTTE, and with the comprehensive funding, training and financing of Indians who were just across the border and pumping everything from Indian state of Tamil Nadu, they started playing havoc with both innocent people of Sri Lanka and the government of Sri Lanka. The terror activities of these groups under LTTE flag continue to increase in the volume and dynamics as well as lethality with every passing year, with Lankan government and its security forces finding themselves completely helpless. One of the main reasons of this helplessness was that the then Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, after staging a drama of assault on him during his visit to Sri Lanka, sent some Indian army troops to Sri Lanka under the cover of aiding Lankan army, but their actual goal was to protect LTTE activities and to keep Lankan forces diverted from actual LTTE locations and formation. This idea was absolutely not liked by Ra hierarchy, and they started creating the formula of organizing splinter groups, and then Ra started giving separate operational tasks, funds and arms to these splinter groups, which included attack on Indian troops in Sri Lanka. This state of affairs led to LTTE Viceroy Prabhakaran to contact his main coordinator in Indian government, the then Indian Foreign Secretary or Secretary of External Affairs, to intervene. In his own under oath testimony, the former Indian Secretary Salman Haider stated that after Prabhakaran contacted him, that Ra operation was not funding him properly and his operations were not getting the same smooth. He or the Foreign Secretary admitted that he organized Prabhakaran's meeting with Intelligence Bureau of India officials, and the handling of LTTE affairs was made responsibility of Intelligence Bureau or not RAW. Any idea who was the key IB position person at that time? Yes, no other than current Indian NSA Ajit Kumar Doval. Although RAW and IB had a long history of rivalry to a very high extent, which somehow sort of ended only after Ajit Doval became Indian NSA and both RAW and Intelligence Bureau came under his command. This move again made Lodhi Road fuming to the extent that the RAW-sponsored splinter groups started attacking Intelligence Bureau officials in Sri Lanka, and IB-sponsored Tamil terrorist outfits were also getting hit. This high voltage tension among the RAW and Indian Intelligence Bureau regarding control of Tamil terrorists eventually ended up in a female Tamil terrorist carrying out a suicide attack and eliminating Rajiv Gandhi, the former Prime Minister of India. Rajiv Gandhi's assassination by Tamil terrorists opened up a new Pandora's box, and Indian government was left with no other option but to establish a high-level judicial commission which was formed under a very reputed judge of India, Justice D.K. Jain, and was declared the Jain Commission in 1996. During the proceedings of Jain Commission, many top government functionaries of India appeared before the commission and got their testimonies recorded under the oath and also through written affidavits. Top three such Indian officials were former Indian Prime Minister himself, Mr. V.P. Singh, former Indian Foreign Secretary Salman Haider, and former advisor to Indian Prime Minister Mr. K. Mohandas. He was the advisor to Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. In his testimony and affidavit and in-camera hearing held on 5th November 1996 before the Jain Commission, Indian Prime Minister Singh admitted that Indian government was training, arming, funding and sponsoring Tamil terrorists, and the first batch of these trained terrorists was fully trained at Chakrata, Tamil Nadu-based camp and sent to Sri Lanka by the order of the then Indian Prime Minister Mrs. Indira Gandhi in 1983. He also gave some unclear locations of these terrorist training facilities across India, citing certain security reasons, but Mr. Indira Gandhi's former advisor had no hesitation in disclosing the exact location of these camps. Mr. K. Mohandas told the Jain Commission that Lankan terrorist training was supervised by India's central intelligence agencies and that the military training to these terrorists was facilitated at the New Delhi controlled facilities in state of Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Uttar Pradesh, Kerala, New Delhi, and above all at the Indian Military Academy at Dehradun, India's most prestigious academy meant for providing training to Indian Army cadets and officers. Indian Foreign Secretary Salman Haider has already been narrated of saying the same. Though disclosures were made during the Jain Commission proceeding in 1996 were very alarming and spine-chilling for any nation, but perhaps not for the Indian, as their dirty work in Sri Lanka continued decades after that, until Lankans learned, though the hard way, to defeat this menace and also to cut Indians to size, and even deported a RAW chief in Sri Lanka from Sri Lanka and finally forged peace and stability. Sri Lanka somehow managed to overpower the monster of Tamil terrorists, although they also had some significant input from Pakistan army in doing so, yet Sri Lankan episode was not enough to fulfill the evil designs of the Indian. And they now shifted their focus once again to Pakistan as they stopped their cow plan devised by the first RAW chief Rameshwar Nath Kao after Iranian monarch Raza Shah Pahlavi smelled and confronted it. Though successive raw regimes continued their both large and small scale operations to seed militancy and terrorism in Pakistan, and especially in the Balochistan province of Pakistan, and the arrest of raw agents like Kulbhushan Yadav from Balochistan, who confessed of being in this dirty business in Pakistan for over 13 years, operating from Iran. The menace here also saw a new dimension only after elements like Ajit Kumar Doval, who was at the key IB position when IB and RAW both were training and funding and arming Tamil terrorists, come to power corridors of New Delhi and under Modi's fascist regime. It appears that Indians soon after Modi formed RSS-led government at New Delhi. The Doval-led Indian intelligence mechanism straight away opted to pick up the terror blueprint that they created and hatched for Tamils and Sri Lanka and LTTP to replicate in Pakistan's Balochistan. When India's NSA Doval was threatening Pakistan with regard to losing Balochistan, he had already activated code of LTTE in Pakistan. And when he was referring to his so-called doctrine of offensive defense, he was actually referring to launching the LTTE formula in Pakistan. In Sri Lanka, Indians had the luxury of having both water and land borders with a place of operation, but for Pakistan's Balochistan, they needed to have good grounds in neighboring Afghanistan to launch the Tamil formula here. Once they made good arrangements in Afghanistan, first by luring NDS, the Afghan intelligence, and Karzai administration, and later Ghani regime to lucrative heroin and drug business, and also other funding, they activated old Balochistan's criminal outfits like BLA, BLF, BRA, etc., and new terror maestro like TTP and splinter groups like Majid Brigade, Khorasanis, etc., just like they did in Sri Lanka. There are some astonishing similarities between how Indians ran terrorist network in Sri Lanka and how they are doing similar system in Pakistan. First of all, just the way they got united all small and big criminal gangs of Sri Lanka on one platform to seek independence, they did same in Balochistan, and on the pattern of LTT, TELO, EPR, ORLF, AROS and TELA, they created union of BLA, BRA, BRF, BLF, BRAS, etc. Just how the sort of military cadre was established for Tamil terrorists and their pay scales were also created, the similar style was replicated for BLA, TTP, etc. And their ranks and formations like Majid Brigade, etc. were created as a military force, and their pay scales were also created accordingly. Just like how the female terrorists were introduced in case of LTTE and the female suicide bombers was created out of LTTE terrorists, female terrorists were introduced in Pakistan out of BLA and TTP, and female suicide bombers were also introduced in Pakistan chapter of the LTTE blueprint of RAW. It is worth noting here that no other terrorist outfit anywhere in the world has used female suicide bombers other than LTTE and BLA during last 50 years or so, crystal clearly proving that the architect of both terror mechanisms is the same. Just like how Tamil terrorists were elevated from small subversive activists like blowing up railway tracks and bridges in a part of Sri Lanka, the BLA also were trained to do the same thing, from blowing gas pipelines or railway tracks in Balochistan to high-profile terror operation they are doing now. Just like the Tamil terrorists of LTT were found killing Sinhalis and people from ethnicities by checking their ID cards, identities. Terrorists in Balochistan are doing the same, killing innocent laborers or people from other provinces or travelers on the buses after checking their identities and their ethnicities. Just like the terrorists in Sri Lanka were attacking the airports and railway stations and trains and buses, the terrorists in Pakistan are also attacking airports, railway stations, trains and buses. Then one sees that just like Tamil terrorists were used to sabotage army and law enforcing agencies facilities, and the Lankan terrorists carried out attacks on Sri Lankan military, air force, navy and police facilities, Pakistan too is witnessing the same. Starting from terrorist attack on PNS Mehran, a naval base, to Mianwali Air Force Base, and from attacks on FC and army facilities to blitzes on police formation in different parts of the country, particularly in KP and Balochistan provinces. Just like how Tamil terrorists were found getting medical treatments in Indian government's official hospitals in India, Pakistani terrorists are also found getting the same medical assistance in Indian hospitals. Just like the Indian medicines, Indian currency and Indian explosives like RDX were recovered from the killed terrorists or their raided hideouts in Sri Lanka, Indian currency, Indian medicines and Indian explosives are being recovered from the killed terrorists in Pakistan or during the raids on their hideouts in Balochistan. All the major weapons used by Tamil terrorists of LTT in Sri Lanka were imported and military grade and not ordinary one similar to the one BLA and TTP terrorists are using in Balochistan, KPK, etc. These 10 crystal clear similarities between what was happening in Sri Lanka and what India is on record to have admitted and what is going on in Pakistan at the moment is crystal clear, more than enough even for a completely blind person to conclude that it is the same script writer, the same choreographer, the same architect behind both terror episodes of same terror saga. Just what could be defined as difference are more innovations and more technological advancement in case of Pakistan than what was being done in Sri Lanka, of course, with the passage of time. But the worries do not stop here, my dear, as it is also very pertinent to mention here that India did not stop in Sri Lanka to what we have just discussed here. In Sri Lanka, they created air and sea wings of Tamil terrorists, the air tigers, the sea tigers, created out of aviation aircraft and motorboats but equipped with guns, bombs and available firing equipment, and Tamil terrorists have been using these aircraft and sea boats in their operation. The biggest apprehension at the moment here is that just the way all the major weapons being used by terrorists in KP and Balochistan have turned out to be those left behind American troops, ISAF and NATO troops in Afghanistan, one needs to remember that Americans also left behind high quality fighter jets like A-29 light combat aircraft, C-130 transport aircraft, CH-46 helicopter and MD-530 helicopters in Afghanistan, and Afghan government is not capable of preventing these flying machines to fall in the hands of India-trained TTP and BLA terrorists. And no wonder that right now the Indians are training these terrorists at their Air Force academies in India and naval academies in India, just the way they confessed of doing the same at the Indian Military Academy, Dehradun. And please do not forget that signature operation of LTT Air Tigers and Sea Tigers was to carry out suicide operation from air and sea, banging planes and boats into the ships and Air Force facilities in Sri Lanka, while the suicide attack syndrome has been already made a new normal in Afghanistan by law already. Let's cross our fingers and let's see for the successful elimination of this terror network the way it was eliminated in Sri Lanka.